Just make some introductory remarks. I started out this morning by creating an open public notepad for anybody to take notes. I've been doing that for the first session, but obviously I can't take notes and run the panel at the same time, so I'd really appreciate it if you wanted to hop in there. The address is just bit.ly, bit.ly/CUNY-membership. And it's all lowercase, so it's bit.ly/CUNY-membership. And if you go in there, it's open. Anybody can add notes to that, and it's a great place to go back to, save some ideas for later, and we can revisit that this afternoon, because I wanted to remind us all that the goal for today is to take everything from these morning sessions and to put them together in the afternoon to remix these ideas and bring them to bear on our own projects and our own organizations so that we can really walk away with some concrete next steps that we can try at home. So please do take some notes mentally or in the document so that we can continue to play with these ideas in the afternoon session. So we've got everyone up here now. I'm really excited. We started out this morning hearing from a lot of organizations outside of the media about how they think about memberships and rewards. Now we're going to hear from some organizations in media, both local, national, and international newsrooms, who are really doing some smart things with rethinking the membership model. And I wanted to say that I'm lucky enough to have worked with and talked with a number of these folks, and I'm really excited about the work that they're doing. So, as Jeff said, my name's Josh Stearns. I'm the Journalism and Sustainability Director at the Geraldine R. Dodge Foundation. And we're working on coaching small local newsrooms on alternative revenue streams, community engagement, and creative collaborations as a way to rebuild the local news ecosystem, and working with folks here at CUNY as well as Montclair State University in New Jersey. We're trying to develop a model for a statewide ecosystem network where local news organizations not only engage their communities in new ways, but also connect and collaborate with each other in new ways. And memberships are one of the things we've looked a lot at in terms of how we can get past just an ad-supported model and really rethink the economics of news through a lens of community engagement. So I'm going to have each of these folks introduce themselves and talk a little bit about their work. I'll just briefly tell you a little bit about them. We only have an hour, and I'm really committed to making sure that you guys don't just hear from us, but you get to ask some questions too. So please, you've got the schedule behind me. If you see us getting close, somebody give me the 10-minute warning to make sure. There you go, Hal. Thank you. To make sure that you guys get a word in edgewise too here. So I want to start out with Tracy Taylor. And Tracy is the co-founder and editor of Berkeley Side, which is a 6-year-old online news site serving Berkeley, California. And I got the good fortune to talk with Tracy a little bit a couple months ago, and she really sparked some ideas for me about how I'm thinking about membership, and I look forward to her sharing some of that with you. Membership plays a great role in her these are all commercial news organizations, I should say here as well. So they're thinking about membership from that perspective. So Tracy, I'll hand it off to you.
Hi. So yeah, I'm Tracy, as Josh said. So Berkeley Side, we founded it 6 years ago. 3 journalists. We always use the word veteran, which is just another way of saying old. And we put it together because for some reason there was a gap in the market. Nobody was really doing any news in Berkeley, California, which seems strange given the type of city it was. And it's grown very, very rapidly. We definitely punch above our weight. There are only 5.5 of us still on staff, and we do everything. I mean, everything from writing, editing, publishing, marketing, event organization, membership. There isn't anything we don't all do, really. We have 2 websites now. We have newsletters. We have a regular roster of events. And on the membership front, we got in there pretty quickly. I think it was like the 2nd year that we were up and running. We decided we should reach out to our readers and say, would you like to give us a little bit of money? Would you like to support us? We're doing, we're giving you this news for free. And what was remarkable very quickly, you probably don't want to go into the detail right now, but was just how quickly people said, yes, we do want to give you money. So we now have, just to give you a sort of context, Berkeley is a city of about 120,000 people. We are getting about easily in excess of 250,000 unique visitors a month. So currently we're at about 400,000, but that's because we ran a huge piece about naked tree protesters, which is very Berkeley, and also gave us a huge boost on our readership. But generally we're running at about 250,000 uniques a month for a city of about 120, and we're very cognizant of the need to do diverse revenue streams, and I would say we're doing advertising events, and our readers support, so our membership program is probably about 20% of our revenue right now.
Thanks. Graham Page is the Operations Strategy Director and has been really key in developing the Guardian's membership program.
Thanks. The Operations Strategy Director, which basically means I've got to set it up, and then the strategy bit means it has to be sort of coherent in the way that we do it. When we set up membership, we started talking about it 3 years ago in a response to the fact that circulation of our print product, which is the most engaging kind of product that there has been, was declining rapidly. How can we keep our most engaged readers? How can we keep them loyal? And there are 3 things which, during the setup, which have been really important to us. First of all, it encouraged us to think again, what is the Guardian for? It's existed for more than 200 years, and there's nothing more than Alan Rusbridger enjoys talking about than what is the Guardian for. And we came to a small paragraph, which I'll read, because I can't remember it, to bring together diverse progressive minds, communities and organisations, and to provide them with information and the motivation to think and act for the better. So quite a high purpose of what the Guardian is for. It's not for it's an internal thing, and the reason I can't remember it is because we don't repeat it when we arrive at work and before we go to bed, and we don't have it written on the wall, but we do use it as a compass occasionally when we're thinking about exactly what it is that we're doing. For membership, the way that iterates is we talk about connecting members to live conversations, communities, and experiences that matter. So it is in a service role to our members, and in fact, to make that point, we've been running a year. It has been called Guardian Membership, and it's now called Guardian Members because we want it to feel very much of the individuals. The second thing I would say is that we're proud of is that it's been highly entrepreneurial. So in effect, we've set up 4 businesses as part of our membership. We've set up a subscriptions business, naturally. We've set up a live events business. We're currently running at a run rate of 200 plus live journalistic events, taking what was on the page or on the screen and putting it on a stage. We've set up a cultural experiences business, but trying to amplify other people's content around museums, around food, around theatre. And we're also launching a small 33,000 square foot building in King's Cross, which will act as somewhat cross between a civic and cultural centre, really tying into this idea of the conversation, debate, discussion underpins democracy, which underpins our core purpose. It's a big project for us, and data capture has been an important thing. But year 1 really feels just like a proof of concept. We've got 125,000 members, but less than 10% of those give us any money, although they are across 200 countries. So at the moment, we've got lots of goodwill, I would say, but we need to work harder. And it's very much getting to the point now, I think, where it looked like an experiment. It looked like something we were trying. We've got the newsroom on board, but as we can see more ad blockers coming online, as we can see the move to mobile, it's starting to feel much closer to something of a life raft, or I'm trying to stop people seeing it as a panacea for everything that, to solve all of our problems, but it's moving that way. And finally, the thing we're most proud of, which we think is brilliant, is our tote bag. which every become a member, every paying member receives a tote bag, a membership card, and a welcome letter. And actually, the card in particular, even if you're a supporter, which is just £5 or $8 a month, people tweet when they receive that. They carry it in their wallet. When they come to our events, they sort of show it to each other. It's got no value yet, although we intend to give it some value.
Great, thanks. And JT Kosteman is a data scientist, mathematician, and psychologist who's currently the chief data officer at Time Inc. And it's great to have him here because we've been hearing bits and pieces about the role of data and how we understand our members or readers or community. And I think that JT's got a lot to add to that conversation.
Thanks. I hope so. I'm not sure, but I hope so. I run the Geeks Who Are Bearing Gifts over at Time Inc. And you know our brands, you know us. We're Time Magazine and People Magazine and Sports Illustrated and let's see, over 90 other publications that span the globe of people's interests and passions, primarily here and in the UK. And so the challenge I was given was we have this 93-year-old company that's never really attended much to data and never really, frankly, taken the time to listen to its own audience members. And that, by the way, is how we define members. You're all our members. Any of our audience, anyone who happens upon, through, onto, or into our properties anywhere, we consider to be our audience and our members. And so Joe Rip, when he became the CEO of Time Inc., very famously or very publicly redefined us from being a magazine company to being a content company. And he was immediately assaulted by many of the editors, several of them who told him, well, that's not the way we do things, and that's not what we've always done. And, well, being the inimitable Joe Rip, that basically I don't care, this is how we're going to do things now. And they challenged him when he said to them, we also need to stop just sort of talking at an audience and start talking with them. We need to start hearing from our people. And in fact, we're one of the only major publishing houses I'm aware of, he shared, that doesn't receive information back from our audience members. And the several of the named editors, who I won't name, came back and told him, well, we can't do that. We can't trust them. We're not really sure what they'll say. And so we've kind of gotten over that as well. And we said we have to open up and enter into a dialogue. If we're going to have an audience, if we're going to have a relationship requires a communication and a trusting communication. And so my team has been charged, among other things, with taking a data-driven approach to editorial. And that doesn't mean we are algorithmically generating stories. It means we're informing the editorial staff and the teams on what our audiences truly care about. And they're balancing that with how do they not simply pander and give them what they're asking for, but still give them premium quality content to be able to sate their needs and address the needs of an audience. And so my team focuses there. We focus on, well, a lot of the sort of pedestrian issues as well, right? Selling more magazines, good. Getting more people to our sites. And we also have a very different view, I think, of advertising. We don't see advertising as some onerous obligation of our audiences. We actually see it as value creating and a value lending opportunity. In fact, we did an experiment a little while ago. We took all the ads out of an issue of People magazine just to see what would happen. And our audience went nuts. They hated it. They told us that this actually contributed to the conversation, which, by the way, I told my wife that, and she said, well, that's ridiculous. I hate advertising. And I told her, well, it's a good thing I'm a big fan of irony, because at the time she was thumbing through a catalog. And I told her, that's advertising without a magazine around it, right? And so we sort of reconceptualized what advertising is and how do we treat it as value-added content for our audiences.
That's actually a great segue to Endea Taylor at Brick City Live, who I got the good fortune to work with on a weekly basis with our project at the local news lab, where we're working with New Jersey sites. And she's been developing a really interesting model that's sort of a mix of loyalty card program and membership program that I'll let her talk a little bit about.
Sure. So just a little bit of table setting. I spent a very long time, more than 10 years now, working in programmatic advertising, banner ads, data. I understand that model like the back of my hand. I actually have had some of you guys as clients, or you guys publications rather, as clients. So when I decided to start reporting and building a small news organization in my hometown, which is Newark, New Jersey, I knew that if I could not figure out a way to do it without banner ads, that there was no way I was going to do it, because the business model just did not lend itself to a sustainable publication at all. So I sort of set out seeking a business model that could work. And I guess I could just kind of frame out some of the things that I kind of wanted to put together in order to arrive at that model. The biggest or the most important factor for me was that, to the previous point, that it was value added. So I wanted whatever I figured out to be something that people would either willingly and enthusiastically join or willingly and enthusiastically pay for. And the value of paying for the thing or joining the thing had to be very, very apparent. I kind of understood that even though this is the center of my world, that I couldn't necessarily rely on the largesse and magnanimity of my audience in terms of sort of funding what I was doing. So although I do think that there's a potential to get some folks to fund what I'm doing because they just love it and they believe in journalism, I didn't think that could lend itself to a broad-based sustainable strategy for building a small news site. And then I also wanted to just respect the demographics of my hometown. Newark is a working class city. Some would call us a poor city even. We have fairly low median income. So there are folks in town who, make a good deal of money and are comfortably middle class, but there are also folks who are not. And so I needed to also understand what population I was working with and think critically about how easily I could get people to pay for things. So that was kind of what I kind of came into the experiment with. And I actually didn't know exactly what I was going to do until I started reporting. So probably almost 2 years ago today is when I published my first story on Brick City Live. And I was mostly covering small businesses and entrepreneurship and the burgeoning residential market downtown, which is where I live. And I kept hearing this recurring theme about businesses and consumers in town, sometimes literally on the same block, just kind of completely missing each other and not being able to find each other and not being able to connect. And I saw in that the potential for that value-added model. And so Brick City Bucks was born out of that discovery. And the basic outline of the program, it's a really basic loyalty program in which businesses pay to offer deals to consumers in town. And I can talk a little bit more, I guess, as the conversation unfolds about exactly how I administer the program and how it's structured. But I thought it made sense for our market that the businesses would be the folks to pay because I could make the value add and the ROI to them very, very apparent through that model. And that users would be the ones who enthusiastically sign up because we're connecting them not only with deals, but also with new things happening in town and with the strain of localism that's also starting to bubble up in Newark as well. And so Brick City Bucks is sort of our baseline membership model, and there are a couple other things that I'm building on top of that to start de-averaging the audience and seeing which populations within our current membership would be willing to pay for a higher level of membership benefits.
Great. And so that gets at a question, if we can each answer this in sort of one sentence. And this, JT, you sort of sparked this for me. You said everybody here is your audience, potential members. Anybody who comes in contact with your products is audience, potential member. Can each of you just say, what do you consider a member? Is it someone who pays, someone who gives you an email, someone who stops at your site? Really quickly, what do you consider a member, and why do you define it that way?
Someone who's responded to a call to action to become a member, which is our registration step plus telling us where you live.
Okay.
Everyone and anyone who comes in contact with any of our data, any of our information, any of our content, and that's at any of our 93 titles, hundreds of websites. We actually sponsor over 400 events, including the largest event in the country, the Essence Festival, Aspen Food and Wine. All of you are our members. We consider, frankly, we reach and have an intimate connection with 150 million adults in the United States. We certainly consider them to be part of our audience, but we consider the remaining 150 million who we don't have quite the same intimacy of a relationship with. We love you too.
For us, it's very directly related to money. If you give us $5 a month or $100 a year, anything actually, then you're automatically a member.
Yeah, similarly, well, our currency is the email address, and name. So those folks are members, folks who sign up for Brick City Bucks.
Great. And so tell me a little bit about how you went about developing your membership programs. What did you do in terms of listening? How did you identify communities that you wanted to build or serve? Tell me a little bit about how you got started with that and how that informed the decisions to get to where you are today.
I can start.
Yeah, go ahead.
Thanks.
Yeah.
I'm a sort of lean startup acolyte, just in the general sense. I like the idea of experimenting and testing assumptions. And so I knew that I wanted my membership program, the Brick City Bucks program, to be mobile-based. I wanted it to have push notifications. So you sign up for this program, you walk into an establishment that offers the program, and you get a notification on your phone that says, hey, member X, redeem your card for this deal. I didn't have the resources at the time that I really wanted to get this thing off the ground to do that. And so I pulled that way back and started with a physical card that I designed myself and got printed just at a shop that I found online. And I walked into a couple businesses in a very, very tight geographical area. So no business was more than a 3-minute walk from the other. And I pitched it as a coupon that people keep in their pocket. I'd had a lot of experience trying to pitch mobiles and apps and stuff like that to local mom and pop shops and didn't really have much success. So I tried to sell it on terms that they kind of understood and had bought on before. And so when I pitched it that way, I pitched 10 businesses. I got 8 yeses and no members at that point. But they all agreed to come on board for the pilot. And then on the flip side, I started actually initially inviting people who were part of my email list to sign up for this card, which was completely old school. Well, old school to me. They sign up and get it in the mail, which is sort of the analog way to me of doing things. And
That's also a way that you got their physical mailing address.
And that's how I got their
for
physical
collecting
mailing address.
your own
Exactly.
data. Yeah.
But what I wanted to see there is it was an interesting stress test because even though I was not comfortable with something I couldn't track, there was no tracking mechanism on the card whatsoever, so I had to rely on self-reporting from businesses to figure out whether they were even seeing traffic from this card. What it did tell me is that if I was able to scale so quickly in terms of getting people to sign up, through this onerous process and to actually wait for something to come, and same thing with businesses, not being able to offer them reporting, et cetera, that if I could do that, then I could surely sell them, a cool mobile app with reporting and instant analytics and, push notifications and all the other conveniences of mobile. So that's how I actually tested the idea and validated that it is something people want. Right now, I'm actually working on the mobile app itself, so it's in development, and I actually have a queue of businesses who now want to buy into this program, and same thing with people. So I actually discontinued the card. So there are a set number of people who have it. No more people are going to get it, but I have like a long queue of email addresses for both businesses and customers who I can instantly bring online once the app is ready in a couple weeks.
So you're proving that this service has value on both ends. Yes. By the wait list that's been created and by the pilot project, sort of a very low cost pilot and listening and feedback process.
Precisely.
Great. Others?
Can I give the polar opposite to that? So. What we did was went through a very traditional product development process, a lot of quantitative research, a lot of qualitative research, talking mainly to our most loyal readers, so people who at least visited the site once or twice a week, and asking them almost for a feature list, but also we had quite a range of what those features might be, all the way through to should we give away the Guardian and mutualize through to, should you have a tote bag or a card or do you like live events? And a process of understanding what people would pay for and also what the organization was willing to do and could take on board is where we ended up with our scheme. One thing I would say is it's way from perfect, so very jealous really of where you are, because although, so we've got a member community of 125,000, something like that. We also have a team of people working in community on the editorial side, talking to all those different communities that we should be really at least thinking about in terms of membership. And then we have a subscriptions community who aren't part of our membership community. And then we have people who read the site. So,
right.
We've got a way to go. But we did a sort of, it took us 2 years to come up with something that we could launch.
Yeah.
And the direction we're going in now, we've just started about 8-9 months ago, is we're moving, while we love all our audience members, we have sort of premium audience members also, right? So obviously the people who subscribe to the various, whether it's the print or the online versions of our content, but we've also started creating new applications, new services, new, premium content that we're offering up to what we would sort of, I guess you would cast as our membership. Mm-hmm. And so one of my favorite examples of that is Horse and Hound magazine. It's a premium equestrian magazine in the UK. It's been, I think it's a 147-year-old publication. And they'd always been serving the needs of this very small community, but we found out that no one else was really serving much of the needs of that community, whether it was in dressage or Joe talks about them as these guys who wear red coats and go around chasing animals in the woods. And no one's really coordinating and addressing some of their needs. So we've moved into everything from e-commerce to coordination of activities. And so we now host most of the major calendars for those groups and for a lot of the activities that are within their community. We've done the same for the bicycling community in the UK, and we're now moving that into youth sports in the United States, where we'll create a central repository and a central mechanism. Everybody who has kids in youth sports knows this is certainly a passion point, and it becomes a bit of a challenge to be able to coordinate where do you get the uniforms and where do you find the teams to sign up for and all that sort of thing. And so as a premium for our either SI subscribers, Sports Illustrated or Sports Illustrated Kids, we're extending some of these services to them as well.
Well, it's interesting. One of the things I hear you saying is, although you're an international brand, you're already honing in on geographies, not just topical interests around equestrian sports or youth sports, but also that there's geographical elements in that. And one of the things on this panel that I think is interesting is that we have people who are very locally focused on geography and folks who are very broadly focused. And so I'm interested in maybe,
Yeah. So just to answer your initial question about how we set up, we have our audience, our readers are incredibly connected to us as it is. I mean, right from the outset, we have hundreds of interactions with our readers across various platforms, every day probably. I mean, comments, Facebook, Twitter, email, they phone us, but generally, they're very invested and very dependent on us as a news source. So I think it was a sort of no-brainer right from the outset that all of these people could belong to a club. I mean, in theory, every one of our readers should be a member, I think. I mean, there's no, that to me it makes perfect sense, because they all should be part of they're very much already part of the Berkeley side community. So just that little sort of tipping point, which is give us a little bit of money to help us, is a very easy one to broach. So the only problem we had was similar to yourself, is we had no resources, no budget. How do we set up a membership program? So I took it on as a sort of one of the many things I do, and I did get some very good advice very early on. I had there was a nonprofit publication in the Bay Area, which actually is no longer with us, but they one of the things they did very, very well was they had a fantastic membership program, and they did I think they had it was one of their most successful aspects. I mean, they didn't actually survive as a publication, but and they were very helpful. The person who had orchestrated that gave me a sort of strategy document, and I took that document and I basically ran with it. It was so many campaigns a year. This is how you should be interacting with your readers. This is how you should convert them into members, and it's proved very, very effective. But the single, we've done various campaigns. We've done the sort of tote bag T-shirt sort of approach, printed photographs around holiday time, all sorts of perks. But the single most successful way that we get people to come and give us support financially is when we just remind them of what we're giving them. And we do that opportunistically when we've had an amazing week or couple of days of reporting. The one that always sort of, the most recent one, I guess, which was most successful, was when we had the Black Lives Matter protests in the Bay Area, and Berkeley was affected. We had huge protests, like a lot of places, obviously, across the country, but we had one reporter out there. We had citizen reporters. We have a lot of people giving us information, tips, right in the midst of things. It was a very dramatic, intense time, and we basically reported live for a week. We were just never stopped. We were just out there the whole time. And about 3 or 4 days into that, we sent out an email, which I have here, and I think we call it internally we refer to it as the no peeing email, and you'll see why. I'll just quickly read you that we need your help to keep doing our job. Last night, Berkeley side reporter Emily Raguso spent 10 hours straight on the ground. She didn't stop to eat or take a bathroom break. She was swatted at with a baton by a police officer, nearly hit by flying glass bottles, and was threatened by rioting activists. Berkeley side live blogged last night's protest until the early hours. More than 80,000 people tuned in, et cetera, et cetera. On Monday morning, Ragusa was on KQED Forum, national media, CNN, Reuters came calling. At Berkeleyside, we care little about the media around the country that want to pick off our reporting. We do care deeply about providing timely and accurate information to you, the Berkeley community. So that, I think 250 odd people immediately, within a days, became members and gave us. And sometimes it's very little money. They might just give us $10 and say that's all I can afford. And sometimes it's 250, or sometimes it's a 25 a month membership. But what we've found has been really, really helpful is when you just say to people, just a little nudge and a reminder, this is what you're getting it for free. Maybe you could help us with, so that we can sustain it and keep doing it.
I love the fact that part of what we need to do in changing the relationship we have with our audiences is to bring levels of transparency that we haven't before. To some extent, news used to just show up on our doorstep, and it would be handy. It's like, hey, it's there in the paper. That's great. And now it just shows up on our website and our Twitter feeds. And for a long time, news organizations haven't had to explain how that news is made, the labor of a reporter who stays up for 10 hours, what it takes to do a massive FOIA request and go through those documents for 3 weeks and sort through them and make sense out of them. The actual labor of reporting, we don't talk about that, but we need to, because that's another way that we show value and worth. But it's also, when we're more transparent, it opens up opportunities for people to see themselves in that process as well. And so I know both of you have used citizen reporters and community members to provide content. And I know, nationwide, organizations of all sizes are thinking about eyewitness media and user-generated content. And I think there's a shift that can happen there around thinking of it opportunistically, like, oh, great, someone's tweeting pictures on the ground of that breaking news event, to actually thinking of it as cultivating participants in the media-making process. In a two-way participatory media environment, we can be training those people. We can be inviting them in. Part of what they can do is we can teach them photography skills so that when they're out there doing eyewitness media, they can take pictures that are even more useful to us. So there's ways in which, to Melody's earlier points, we can think about that changing relationship in ways that bring members on, but also give them real value that's useful for them. And I want to touch on that for a second. We've been talking a lot about the value that these membership programs provide to our organizations. How do you guys think about the value you're providing back to the members, whether that's changing the relationship between you and the members or connecting them to each other because you know that they have shared interests or passions?
Yeah, I can speak to that. I think it's all about community. It all comes back to building community. And we definitely don't see it as just, give us some money and then we'll, that's it, that's the end of it. If that's just the beginning, that means that we invite them to an annual gathering, it's a party, we do events where members get special discounts, along the lines of The Guardian. You get if you're a member, we basically give you a few, privileges. You'll get first dibs on something, or you'll be the first to hear. We also, I think it was mentioned earlier, access to journalists. It's something we aspire to do. We're really building on this membership program. In the next year, we really aspire to build on those sorts of things where we maybe have dinners with the editors. Something else that was suggested, and I think Jeff mentioned it, was, what do you want to read? Tell us what you want to read, and would you be willing to pay for it? I mean, here, people are saying all the time, there's this big investigative piece that needs to be done. Berkeleyside, why aren't you doing it? We're not doing it because we have one full-time reporter and we just have a wealth of stories to do. But if people are willing to chip in, that's actually, chip in is another little tip. We had one of our readers is Marcus Mulitsas, who's the owner of Daily Kos, which happens to be based in Berkeley, or he lives in Berkeley, I should say. And he's been very helpful, just on a very informal basis, because he's a fan of Berkeleyside, and he has suggested ways our emails could be improved, little tricks of the trade. I believe the Daily Kos now relies totally on reader support as opposed to any other form of, that is their biggest single revenue source. And this is just a little tiny aside, but he said the words chip in are incredibly successful. If you say to people, chip in, it's just like it's not a big commitment, it's just a little chip in. Anyway, we used it and it worked, so I can vouch for that. But anyway, so it's really about community. It's about, the value of becoming a Berkeleyside member is you become part of this club. You're just closer to the heart of Berkeleyside.
Great. Anything else?
For us, a lot of it became, something that shockingly we weren't doing effectively, I think, is really understanding our readership effectively and who our audiences are. My son is a journalist in New Jersey, so very good. He works for the New Jersey Herald, and under the name of Jake West, I have to plug for my son. It's pretty good. You know, first thing he tells me, he always looked at, while he was back in school and he did his undergrad at Rutgers under Robert Montemayor, first thing he would always tell him was, I want you to understand who you're writing for and get a great understanding of who the audience is. And he told me it struck him when he first went out professionally how few people really cared about that and were asking that. They were writing as if they were writing for just the anyone.
Right.
And anyone could be their audience member. There's a quote he was very fond of, he shared with me, I now have on my office wall, a quote from Marcus Tullius Cicero said, "If you wish to persuade me, you must think my thoughts, feel my feelings, and speak my words." And so what I've charged my guys with doing, I told them when I took over the team, you have basically two things you focus on from now on. The only two things I want to know are thing one, I want to know our audiences. I want to know everything about them. I want to know what their passions are, what they care about, what they like, what they don't like, who they are, where they are, when they care about things. Give me everything you can. And then thing two is I want to use that information to feed this thing two, which is to create new products, services, experience, opportunities, and content that delight and engage them, and hopefully serve as a mechanism to feed thing one and learn that much more about them. I think we have changed, and Norm Pearlstein, our Chief Content Officer, has made it sort of his mandate and his mantra to say, know thy audience. Who are they and who is it that we're serving?
I think that idea of delight and making it fun and something that people want to be a part of is something we forget about. We get very serious about these things, especially when we're talking about the bottom line. But making these things fun to be a part of, enjoyable and neat is really important. I've got more questions, but I want to pause here to open it up to the audience and give you some chances. I don't know, Jeff, do you want folks to use the mic here?
Oprah. You don't have an aisle. It's a bad thing.
Jeff running.
Make Jeff run a little bit.
I need the steps on my left.
Hi, I'm Andy Wallmeyer. I'm publisher of MinPost. We're a regionally focused nonprofit news site in Minnesota. We have about 15 full-time employees, about 1.5 to 2.0 million in revenue. So small team. But one of the questions debate we're having in our newsroom right now is, I want to say, tell me everything about our audience. I want to know these things, and I want to be able to deliver some really customized messages. But I get pushback inside of our organization saying, we shouldn't go and collect these things. And we have a great user experience engineer who's been a tremendous addition to our team, and he's a real advocate for the user. And he said, the things that people hate about news sites is A, they're too slow, and B, they're stalking me. And stop it. Stop following me everything I do. So how do you guys think about balancing those two things, about understanding your audience and exactly what they're doing and how they're engaging versus that desire to not be tracked? Does anyone offer an opt-in, like I will volunteer to be tracked?
I actually have a bit of a radical view on that, so I may not be the best one to ask, but I think a lot of what we're concerning ourselves with is the press, the pundits, the politicians, and the professionally hysterical who are shouting about a lot of privacy-related issues that aren't shared by the public at large. And I know that because I asked them and because I listened to them. The frustration that most people have with large organizations and organizations that are creeping and listening to them is that they're not being heard. What we do is we bother to listen when they want to share information with us. We don't go looking in their sock drawer, and we don't go sorting through their private information. But if they tell us something, we give them the respect of actually caring what they say. And it's not even overt, it's their implicit information that they share. You know, this last weekend I went and I'm speaking at another conference, and I'm talking about what I'm labeling the privacy myth and this hyperbole around privacy. And so I went to Amazon and I bought a Faraday bag. Does anyone know what a Faraday bag is? In essence, you put your cell phone into it, you put a device into it, and it's shut off from the world. Right? You get no cell signal, no one can track you, no one can get any information. It cost me $9.95. I got it on Amazon, it arrived in 2 days. How many of you have one? Exactly. How many of you don't mind the fact, implicitly or tacitly, that Amazon and Verizon and Sprint know exactly where you are and where you've been all day and what you've been doing and who you've been doing it with? So we have out of an entire audience, 1. And that's sort of the point. I think the frustration we have with large organizations is not that they're listening, but that they're not. I think when we talk about the companies that frustrate us and that we have these challenges with, it's those companies that don't care. What we do is we bother to actually listen to what they're saying. And I don't think it has to cross that creepy threshold. Those of you who saw my bio know my former history. Those of you who don't know, I'm formerly of the US intelligence community. And so
It's
yes,
your fault.
I'm the one. They all worked for me at one time or another, that's true. I worked for the Director of National Intelligence and CIA, and for several of those groups. And I'll tell you, they know infinitely less about American citizens than some of these corporations and organizations. And yet, all of us every morning don't mind not only using our cell phones. How many of you used Google Maps to get here? Or sent your mail using Gmail? Or have used Angry Birds ever? Right? And it turns out we have this, as long as there's a quid pro quo and as long as there's value being derived from it, we don't mind. And so what I say to them is, if people are that willing to share that information and those insights with me, how dare I not care? You know, I'm old, and forgive me, we'll wrap up the rant in 2 seconds. I'm old enough to remember a time before major grocery store chains came to New York and to Brooklyn. And we used to do our shopping at Henry's Grocerette. And Henry knew me. He knew what kind of cereal I liked. He knew my mom and what coffee she drank. And he knew what beer my dad drank. He knew where he worked, and when he was off for vacation. We used to call it customer service. We've escaped from all that. We've gotten away from it to the point now where we've become this disembodied, unknown, anonymous entities. And if Cicero was right, then we have an obligation to know who our audiences are if we're going to serve them in their needs.
And
I
Dan,
think
did
it's a
you want to jump
transaction
in?
of relevance. I think one thing I've heard a lot today so far, pardon me, is relevance. And this is a transaction of relevance where would you rather be treated like a mass? Would you rather be treated like everybody else? But we have to give openness to that. We've done a very bad job, I think, of being transparent about that. Sorry.
Yeah, the only other thing I was going to add to that is, in addition to analytics data, you can also ask and tell folks why you're asking and what they get when they give you an answer. And I've had a lot of success doing that as well. I mean, to your point, people will willingly, if they understand that you're trying to disaggregate them and treat them like a human being and deliver value in exchange for their information, 9 times out of 10 they'll do it.
And there's a difference between us asking for information and building that relationship in a genuine and transparent way versus having programmatic ads that are tracking our movements everywhere we go, or where we're handing over the data that we're collecting to not even taking it ourselves, but giving it to ad companies and Facebook and everyone else. So there's that question too, like what's slowing down our sites? Is it because we're asking for information or because of the ways that we're placing ads? There's another question around.
Question. Hi. So this is sort of related to what we're talking about, but I think there's, and this also relates back to the first panel that, so I think what we're really talking about here, even though we're calling it membership, is user experience, right? Like if you design your site to have a delightful user experience, then I think people may want to be a member. But one thing I feel like is a mass assumption that I'm hearing about in both of these panels is that I want to be in a community, that I want, if I do something on the site for teachers, that I now want to know everything else that teacher is doing. And actually, so I guess I just want people to talk about how they design for people like me who actually dread that, and I want to opt out of that except when I choose to opt in. So I think there is sort of a... Well, I guess what I'm asking is, how easy do you make it and should you make it to not just assume that what I want is community because I want to be a member of whatever it is you're doing? Because sometimes all I want to do is say, thanks, I like your stuff. Thank you. Here's a check. Leave me alone. And it sometimes creates a lot of work for me to be left alone. Mm-hmm. And I guess I just want to raise the point that I don't think membership... I'm a member of a lot of things, and I just joined Gimlet because I do want to know everything first, and I want the sneak previews, and I want the material that other people can't hear. I do want that from Gimlet. But I don't want that from some of the other things that I do contribute to or even am a, quote, member of, because it's too much. It feels like an assault. I just want to say, here, I like what you do, let me help. Leave me alone. And so I just wanted to raise the introverts leave me alone issue.
I would say it just comes down to how you how you interact with people who do choose. Once you have chosen to be a member, we're very, very cautious about how many emails we send out. We probably do much less than average. I mean, I think some people, I get some publications send me daily emails. Do we ask them how many times can we contact you, that sort of thing? Well, just do you even want? Oh yeah, no, of course. No, we would never send anything out to anybody. And people often do that sort of, here, we're sending you something, opt out if you want. No, we'd never do that. We're incredibly, I would say, tentative and yeah. People don't hear from us very often, actually. I think maybe not enough, but.
I mean, for us, there's two things. First of all, we have sort of quite strict opt-in rules about what people do and don't receive. And secondly, to the other point, is we can infer whether people want emails about what's happening in the member community or not, because we can see if they open them. So we can actually stop sending them emails if we don't think that they're interested. We'll stop sending them emails about live events if they don't buy any tickets to our live events. So we can use that data in a positive way. We recognise as an introvert doesn't want to get all of this stuff because they're not engaging with it. We'll still give them the opportunity to give us money. They have an auto renew on their subscription. That's great, but we won't do that. The other thing I would say about our community as such, we're trying to create the conditions for the community to build itself rather than to say, you all need to come together, here's your badge, sort of almost conference style. Around our events, we're starting to put on the email, members, you can go to this bar afterwards, hopefully one of the speakers will be there, or some of the journalists will be there, other members will be there, and trying to leave that and see how those things organically develop. We totally understand that, we've looked a lot about participation in our events and participation in our community overall, and really trying to cater for the sort of introvert who doesn't want to engage.
I think if we're really talking about building genuine relationships, those relationships have to be about listening in real ways, not making those assumptions and creating those feedback loops to actually to listen and adjust our behavior. I also think that one of this highlights is the difference between building a community and serving communities. And that's not necessarily a news organization's goal or role to go out and build a brand new community just for us. It's maybe our role is to listen to the communities that are out there that aren't being served very well and serve them better. So I think that that's an important distinction as well. And we've got a question here, and then I want to make sure there's a question in the side of the room, too.
Well, hi, thank you. Great panel. Chris Stevenson from a startup called Onwards. We're trying to build a personalization engine for the supply side. There's a lot of recommendations engines out there that really serve more of the demand side. So we're hoping to get some information here today from people who create the content. To the point the gentleman made in the back from InPost about people tracking them down or feeling hounded, so to speak, I'm wondering how many of those people are really feeling the effects of ad retargeting, which I think can feel very much like they're not listening to me, but yet they're following me everywhere. And I think there's a lot of confusion out there about ad retargeting, and I don't think that's what you folks are trying to do at all. I think that's one of the many tools being used out there. I think it's used too much. I think it's used in the wrong ways. But the idea of engaging and understanding what it is that the community wants or that your readers want, I think is really one of the things that you're trying to get at.
And I think, excuse me, I think it's important that we make a technical distinction between what we're talking about in ad tech. And we keep sort of blithely referring to all this as programmatic. And programmatic is sort of one side of the coin. There's programmatic, which really is nothing more than a server call. In essence, what's happening, the same way you serve up any other content, if it happens to be an ad, now we call it programmatic. And if we served up the same ad to everyone every time they came to the site, it would still be programmatic. When we get cool and sexy about it is when we start talking about targeting. And targeting can be as simple as if you call between the hours of X and Y, you get this ad, or from this geography or this area. The problem I'll offer is not programmatic. The problem is targeting. Yeah. And most people do it very, very, very poorly. And in essence, what they're doing is they're predicating it on the most superficial of behaviors. You happen to see this ad, other ad, or you went to this site, and now we're going to haunt you for the rest of your lives. And that's where we get retargeting challenges, right? Is things like that, and we get the ad serving problems in the first place. One of the things we've taken very seriously is saying we need to move beyond behavioral targeting to what we're referring to as cognitive behavioral targeting. We want to understand who you really are and what you really need. to that point, my assistant is as we speak, she thinks I don't know, but she's trying to book a trip to Turks and Caicos for her and her girlfriend. And that's all she's focused on this week, is trying to find that trip. I will guarantee you, if an offer showed up in her inbox for 30% off, alcohol included, she would not see that as an advertisement. She'd see that as an opportunity, right? And so what we're saying is, can we get the right ad to the right person in the right context for the right product, service, offer, experience at the right time in the right milieu? And that, to me, is where we need to be concerning ourselves. Not, gee, we're serving up ads, and that's not the problem. Advertising done right can be a service. And so how do we cognitive behaviorally understand and target our audiences more effectively programmatically? And yet, and that's true, absolutely, I agree, Netflix, to the point, serves up movies that said, if you like, you'll like this, and yet Amazon actually takes a completely different approach. They say, people who bought this, bought that. It's just, they're not guessing anything. It's pretty straightforward, right? Even to be able to do that is a more effective way to serve things up to people. To be able to say, look, you bought this, people with your taste, obviously, who bought this also. What would be even cooler is if they said a constellation of products or services also like this. And now we're getting into prediction engines and recommender systems and those sorts of things. And by the way, those of you who think it's beyond your keen or your budget, it's not. All these insights, all these capabilities are now open source. They're readily available. They're not unlearnable. I'm a professor at CUNY also. If we ever get bored, I'll teach you everything you need to know about big data, SQL, and ad tech in under an hour. It's not that complicated.
Hi, I'm going to jump back for a second to the question before last. And I want to speak for those of us who are in the room who are coming from independent and nonprofit journalism organizations. And I was really curious, because I was thinking about this when the question about opting in and opting out. And as from a nonprofit journalism organization, when we start to think of audience development and the reader versus also considering membership programs like revenue generating membership programs, do we need to really think about when is a reader and when is a reader a member, or when is a member and do we need to start to create like kind of different or parallel communication strategies, like two different silos? I think sometimes, and I don't know the answer to this question because I'm kind of at the very early stages of this, but when do we make this assumption that I like your story, that was a great article, but my level of commitment is not really there, even if it's not even in terms of just tangible support, but even receiving the emails or coming to your site every day. And so how do we start to think of how we engage those different communities and not just kind of move forward and lump them into one group and maybe lose them? I don't know. These are a bunch of questions that I'm kind of putting out there.
I think at the moment there's two approaches. One is everybody's a member, and all subscribers are members, and people who can't be bothered to set up a membership scheme just call all of their subscribers members. And there's others who are trying to be a bit more sophisticated about it. We have quite a live debate in The Guardian because we have, we sell merchandise, we sell other products. We want to make those sales as frictionless as possible. Some people would like every time someone makes a purchase that they would become a member, so that you have them, everyone existing in one ecosystem, and we can sort of understand them within that ecosystem. Others would say, let them buy the thing that they want, continue to serve them interesting products and interesting content, and build the engagement to the point that they want to become a member. That's probably where we sit at the moment, although I think that we, because we've done it organically, don't offer a very well thought through user experience. So some people will say, well, I'm a subscriber, why aren't I a member? Why don't I get these benefits that members get? I give you much more money than they do. So it's for us, we're in that camp, but
yeah, it's a really good question, because I think there's a temptation perhaps to start seeing non-members as sort of second-class citizens, like, well, you don't support us, you're just a reader, But obviously that is not how you want to be. And I think every reader is as valuable as every member, and as you know, of course, they're all potential members too. So, but I think you need to be careful not to fall into that, and to really, nurture everybody is, all your readers are as valuable as each other.
Although on the other side of that, one of the challenges we have is we just went out and we did a large-scale survey to ask our audience members what is the premium, right? And so we asked them, what's the difference between our digital offerings in this particular site for this particular title and the hard copy of the magazine or the digital edition of the magazine? And like 98% said they're identical, and they're not.
Right.
And so we found that we're giving away a lot of value there, and we're unable to sufficiently fill the true needs of some of those audience members, and that's our fault. We're not communicating that effectively enough, so we're not showing what the value is of that membership. What is the extra premium value?
Yeah. You
And
want
I
to
think
make
it's
them feel
incumbent on us.
special, and so it's
So
it's a balancing
that's
act.
balance,
Yeah.
So I think we're running out of time. Jeff, I know you want to make one more comment. I want to point out in this conversation that what we're touching on here is that membership is one part of a larger universe of community engagement. And so there's a wide array of ways that organizations are engaging their communities in deep, meaningful, powerful ways. Membership is perhaps one piece of that. And I think if you want to look at an organization that's doing this well and thinking about it well and being very transparent about it, you can look at ProPublica, for example. If you look at their Get Involved page, I mean, there's a multitude of ways that you can get involved with ProPublica, from the very minor, small ways to the very large and engaged ways, and they let you really define that and engage in the ways that are meaningful for you. And my colleague Molly from the Dodge Foundation has written about ProPublica's engagement strategies, and they just received $2 million from the Knight Foundation to expand those strategies and to make them more open and transparent and useful to other news organizations. So ProPublica is actually going to be helping other people figure this out as well. So definitely take a look at what they're doing. And
Let me make one more point, because I think there's a question you asked earlier about what is a member, and then you asked the same question about what is a member, and I'm going to quibble with your answers just for a second here and see where we go here. Because I think what we're being too binary, right? Subscriber, no. Member, no. I think we have a very long, pardon me for the marketing speak, funnel. And it starts over here with mass. I don't know you. I don't care who you are. You're the same as everybody else. As Melody said, she and I get the same story, though we are in different demographics. It's true, but the hair is prematurely gray, Melody. Right, so you're a mass. That's where we've been. That's where we had to be. And then all the way on the other end, down here, is somebody who's a subscriber and a member, and we know all the things about them and all that. In the middle are tremendous opportunities. And to me, it starts down here with a first data point. I know newspapers in this country that have the majority of their traffic from out of market when they have only in-market ad sales. Those people are all but worthless to them. They get, remnant advertising. What's the first data point? I asked this question at a certain financial services journalism company. I said, what's the first data point that would let you serve people better based on that? And half the room said, what industry are you in? And half said, what's your job title? Right? They're not using that now because we still are in the mass media view, the mass media business model of reach and frequency. For a local publication, do you live in my market? Where do you live? I can clearly give you better service. And our social journalism students here at CUNY have done some exercises on this, talking to people and finding that out. At The Guardian, my example there is, if you're in America, you get Guardian America, which is wonderful, we love it, but if you're an expat and you actually understand this fakakta, ridiculous, inexplicable sport called cricket, we don't give it to you, right? If I knew you were an expat, that would have a different relevance and so on. And then you go up the line where I'm willing to actually do something, right? I'm willing to sign up and send a letter on behalf of The Guardian to Keep It in the Ground, or I'm signing up for your program, or I'm joining a naked tree huggers community, or whatever the heck you do.
I'll join that.
That's all we do in Berkeley.
I know it is. Right? That's another step. And then, I buy something from you. I care about your merchandise. I want to be a Kickstarter, a supporter of you, a patron of you. I want to support you. Yes, go ahead. Sign me up as a member. Yes, sell me your subscriptions and that kind of stuff and get me to your events. Those are all steps along the way. And to say that a member is only somebody who is actually a member, or is everybody, I think is the other way to go, is wrong, or has joined you, or you have their email address, I would contend, even though Hal's going to yell at me for extending this even farther, I would contend that that's a little off. So that's the kind of thing I want to talk about as a group today. But now that I've had my say, just argue back with me for a second, then we'll go have a quick bathroom break.
You're wrong. That was easy. I think there's this, for us at least in our business model, there's this sense of exclusionism that we have by conferring membership on people that it doesn't appeal. What we're saying is our writ, our mandate, our raison d'etre as an organization is to provide news, information, service, entertainment, content to the world. And we don't exclude that. We used to, typically by saying for the low price of $19.95 for an entire year, we will give you a subscription too. But even then, you could always go to the library, you could go to your doctor's office or get your oil changed, and you are perfectly free to access all of our content. Once we digitized that, we decided we weren't going to now start excluding people from membership and from being part of that community. If you want to engage with us on the most simple level and simply get redirected from a link on LinkedIn that bitlicizes you into us and you don't even know you're on one of our sites, and our story gave something to you and added to your life, we've done our job. If we were able to marry that with some advertising that was relevant to you and gave us a little bit of income on the side, good for us. But our primary mission is to do just that. People Magazine is one of my favorite. The mission of People Magazine is extraordinary stories about ordinary people and ordinary stories about extraordinary people. That's it. The job is to share that with you in whatever mechanism, whatever content, whatever medium it is. We do that and we're done. By saying if members only need apply or members only are served, that isn't consistent with our ethos.
I would just say that I think what you described is exactly how we do think about all of our readers and everyone in our ecosystem. It's just that member is the badge that we give to those people that have opted into that particular thing. But we unfortunately do sometimes even talk about funnels ourselves.
Yeah, we don't talk about funnels, but I think we're on the same.
It's against the law in Berkeley, I think.
I think it's, yeah, I think we were saying earlier, I think all our readers are part of our community. Some support us financially, and that means they become a member. It's true, it's a little bit of an arbitrary term, but I think you do have to start delineating in some way.
Our membership program is so transactional right now. I mean, you become a member, it's free, and you get something in return. We did experiment with like an exclusive talk that was tied to the Brick City Bucks program, but that wasn't exclusive to members, and it was free as well. You know, ours is still forming, and there's like kind of no kind of hard line between, you know, membership in our program is not gating off any content or anything like that right now. All it does is avail you of deals at this point. So
as you go in the afternoon, I think about the kinds of relationships. Barbara wants a certain kind of relationship. Other people want different kind of relationships. How can we be there to serve those relationships wherever they are, being absolutely right, open to all? I want to thank a great panel. You have, first, thank the panel.